Before delving into the profound insights of Arthur Schopenhauer, consider this. Have you ever retreated from a bustling social gathering, not due to animosity towards others, but because an inner whisper suggested a deeper, more authentic reality lay elsewhere? If you've experienced this subtle disquiet in social settings, a quiet detachment, a yearning for solitude born not of arrogance but an intuitive sense that life's profoundest truths reside within, then you are not alone. Indeed, you stand on the precipice of one of philosophy's most radical propositions concerning intelligence, isolation, and the human condition, a truth articulated with unsparing honesty by Schopenhauer. Often labeled the philosopher of pessimism, Schopenhauer did not merely tolerate solitude, he revered it. For him, a disinclination towards social engagement was not a deficit in the intelligent mind, but its inevitable outcome. He contended that discerning individuals possess the capacity to pierce through the superficiality of conventional human interactions, perceiving the performative nature of social rituals and the endless, truth-evading small talk. To such a mind, this is not merely tedious, but profoundly deceptive. Life is fleeting, time is precious, thus, the intelligent individual questions the squandering of these invaluable resources on mere superficiality. It is crucial to understand that Schopenhauer was not advocating misanthropy, rather, he championed authenticity. He posited that the majority of social interactions are driven not by genuine affection or intellectual curiosity, but by ego, a relentless need to appear witty, superior, desirable, or important. For a deeply introspective and intellectual person, this incessant masquerade becomes intolerable. They perceive social life as a grand stage where everyone enacts a role, and the more acutely aware one becomes of the script, the more arduous it is to maintain the illusion of reality. Schopenhauer famously penned, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him." This suggests that shallow thinking fosters comfort with surface-level living, while for those who contemplate existence, suffering, mortality, and time, ordinary conversation devolves into a cacophony, obscuring the profound inner signal. The deeper that signal resonates within, the more unbearable the external noise becomes. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation feeling as though you were observing a theatrical performance rather than engaging in something genuine, where the spoken words felt predictable, rehearsed, and hollow? This is not cynicism, it is clarity. It signifies an awakening, and Schopenhauer suggests that such an awakening often necessitates withdrawal. Yet, solitude does not equate to loneliness. In fact, Schopenhauer argued that the intelligent mind flourishes most authentically when alone, not because it abhors others, but because it no longer requires external validation to feel complete. In solitude, the mind is liberated to think freely, delve deeply into texts, and create meaning unhindered. The intelligent person does not spurn social life from an inability to navigate it, but because they have transcended it, having glimpsed the more sacred realm of the inner world. Schopenhauer's philosophy delves even deeper, positing that most people recoil from solitude because they fear confronting themselves. To be alone is to face the unfiltered truth of one's own consciousness, a prospect terrifying to many. However, he maintained that the intelligent person eventually learns to embrace this confrontation. Turning inward marks the commencement of the true journey, not one of status, success, or social climbing, but of profound self-discovery. This journey, while solitary, is never barren. Schopenhauer himself lived a life largely characterized by self-imposed isolation. He eschewed marriage, distrusted crowds, sought solitary walks, and engaged in obsessive reading. Far from feeling unfulfilled, he discovered in this inward existence a truth inaccessible through the social sphere. He observed that the majority of humanity lives outwardly, pursuing distraction, entertainment, and validation, while the intelligent individual gradually shifts to an inward life, seeking understanding, coherence, and tranquility. This leads to a pivotal question: when were you last truly alone, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually? And what did you discover there? Was it emptiness, or something sacred? At the core of Schopenhauer's philosophy lies the radical notion that solitude is not a punitive measure but a profound privilege, a sanctuary where the mind can engage in profound internal dialogue, where the soul can breathe, where the illusions of society dissipate and genuine reality begins to manifest. This requires courage, a willingness to confront the silence. Yet, within that silence, the intelligent mind does not atrophy, it awakens. If solitude is the natural habitat of the intelligent, then suffering is its inevitable companion. Schopenhauer declared this not as a mere suggestion, but as an unshakable truth of existence: to comprehend deeply is to suffer profoundly. This is not because intelligence inherently darkens life, but because it illuminates life with unvarnished honesty. He argued that the intelligent individual is either cursed or blessed with a level of awareness most people never attain. They perceive the inherent absurdity, the fleeting impermanence, the pervasive chaos, and the incessant craving that define human existence. Once this clarity is achieved, it cannot be undone. The veil has been irrevocably lifted. Schopenhauer positioned suffering at the very core of existence. According to him, our lives are driven by an insatiable force he termed the will, a blind, irrational striving that underpins all phenomena. This will fuels our desires, cravings, pursuits, and graspings. However, the critical caveat is that the will can never be truly satisfied. The moment one desire is fulfilled, another immediately takes its place. This ceaseless cycle, he believed, constitutes the tragic architecture of life: brief interludes of satisfaction punctuated by prolonged periods of longing, frustration, and pain. For most, this cycle is simply accepted as the norm. But the intelligent person penetrates this illusion. They discern the underlying pattern, and the often consequent outcome is despair. This explains why intelligence and suffering are so frequently intertwined. The more lucidly we grasp the nature of the world, the more challenging it becomes to find solace in its deceptions. Schopenhauer wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." Yet, he also recognized that within that solitude, many will encounter the raw essence of suffering, not merely personal grief, but existential suffering, the anguish of conscious existence in a world that appears at best indifferent, at worst cruel. Have you ever felt that profound weight, that strange heaviness, stemming not from a specific event, but from the chilling awareness that everything is ephemeral, that your joys are transient, your relationships finite, and even your greatest accomplishments destined for oblivion? This is not depression or dysfunction, it is clarity, and precisely what Schopenhauer believed intelligent individuals must confront. The more you comprehend the nature of reality, the more you suffer, not because you are flawed, but because you are awakened. Yet, Schopenhauer did not conclude with despair. He posited that the very awareness that engenders suffering can also pave the path to liberation. Once we recognize that the will, the relentless force of wanting, is the fount of our pain, we can begin to detach from it. We can begin to utter no, not to life itself, but to its accompanying illusions. We can cultivate a simpler, quieter, more mindful existence, not in pursuit of incessant pleasure, but in pursuit of profound inner stillness. Consider this: what if your suffering is not an indication of something amiss with you, but a sign that you are beginning to transcend the trivial, the shallow, the inauthentic? What if pain is the unavoidable cost of wisdom? Schopenhauer would assert that this is not only true, but necessary. The intelligent mind must pass through suffering as gold passes through fire. It is purified, divested of illusion, and rendered authentic. This is why many highly intelligent individuals often appear melancholic, even in the absence of obvious external distress. They are not merely reacting to their own lives. They are responding to life itself, bearing the profound burden of awareness. And yet, within that burden resides a quiet dignity, the dignity of one no longer deluded, no longer chasing phantoms, one who can reside in silence not due to a lack of words, but from the realization that most words are mere distractions from deeper truths. So, what illusions do you still cling to in order to evade suffering? And what might unfold if you relinquished them, not to descend into despair, but to ascend into truth? A silent revolution unfolds, not in the public square, but within the soul of an awakened individual. It commences the moment you perceive the world not with disdain, but with crystalline clarity, recognizing that much of what humanity pursues, defends, and obsesses over ultimately holds no true significance. Recognition, approval, influence, even love, when filtered through the prism of ego and attachment, become chains. Schopenhauer, with his unyielding insight, understood that true liberation necessitates detachment, not from life itself, but from the societal illusions that are so fervently worshipped. In this detachment lies a freedom so profound it feels almost perilous. Schopenhauer viewed the crowd, the collective, the masses, not as inherently malevolent, but as fundamentally blind, guided not by truth, but by impulse, instinct, and the pervasive will. The crowd, in his estimation, demands conformity. It pressures you to smile when you yearn to scream, to applaud mediocrity, to sacrifice your inner world for external validation. However, the intelligent person begins to perceive this for what it is, a performance, a masquerade. And upon seeing the dance, one is presented with two choices: join in and lose oneself, or step away and risk isolation. Yet, here lies the paradox: stepping away does not isolate, it liberates. Detachment is not apathy or emotional numbness. It is the deliberate refusal to allow one's identity to be dictated by the opinions and desires of others. It is the radical act of choosing one's own values, one's own rhythm, one's own trajectory. In a society addicted to attention, approval, and constant stimulation, such independence is nothing short of rebellion. Reflect on how much of your life has been shaped by external expectations, your attire, your opinions, your aspirations. How much of this is genuinely yours, and how much is merely borrowed, absorbed from a culture that never truly inquired about your authentic self? Schopenhauer invites us to pose that terrifying, yet beautiful question: what part of your life would crumble if you ceased pretending? Detachment does not imply a rejection of all things, it signifies a discerning choice of what truly matters. It means dedicating less time to the pursuit of admiration and more time to the contemplation of truth, less time networking and more time reading. Less time scrolling and more time thinking. It is not about escaping the world, but engaging with it on one's own terms. And this, Schopenhauer believed, is the sole means to preserve one's soul in a world relentlessly seeking to dilute it. He frequently emphasized that the more intelligent an individual, the more they will prioritize inner wealth over outward display. The crowd may chase status symbols, but the wise seek inner harmony. The crowd may find exhilaration in gossip, but the wise find peace in silence. The crowd may define success by how many know your name, but the wise define it by how deeply you know yourself. This is the true rebellion, not to outshout the world, but to become so profoundly still that the world's noise no longer stirs you. However, detachment is arduous. It entails walking away from superficial praise, disappointing those who presume to know you, and finding solace in solitude when society declares loneliness a failure. It demands trusting your inner compass, however faint its whisper, more than the loudest external voices. And this requires immense courage. So, ask yourself, what would your life look like if you ceased performing for the crowd and began living for the truth? What would you gain if you let go of every falsehood, even if it cost you everything familiar? For ultimately, freedom is not found in belonging to the multitude, it is found in belonging to oneself. And this, Schopenhauer would contend, is the only belonging that truly matters. At the very core of Schopenhauer's philosophy lies a truth that modern society not only disregards but actively fears: solitude is not emptiness, it is essence. In a world obsessed with connectivity, with being seen, with incessant interaction, those who withdraw are frequently misunderstood. They are branded as antisocial, eccentric, even flawed. Yet, Schopenhauer perceived something entirely different. He saw that those who choose solitude are often the ones most vibrantly alive internally, because solitude, when embraced, transforms into a crucible for wisdom. It is not a retreat from life, but a return to its genesis. When perpetually surrounded by others, we are in a constant state of adaptation. We subtly, sometimes entirely, adjust our tone, our posture, our thoughts to conform to the prevailing environment. Over time, a peculiar phenomenon occurs: we begin to lose the contours of our authentic self. We become a composite of impressions, a mirror reflecting our surroundings. But solitude disrupts this pattern. It establishes a sacred space where the self can no longer hide behind roles, where the voice that has been drowned out by the world begins to re-emerge, timidly at first, then with burgeoning power. Schopenhauer believed that the most elevated minds are solitary, not because they dislike people, but because they crave truth. And truth, he asserted, is rarely discovered amidst noise, it is found in stillness, in books, in contemplation, in nature, in the silent confrontation with one's own mind. This is why countless intellectuals, artists, and mystics throughout history have sought seclusion, not to escape life, but to delve more deeply into it, to access insights unattainable within the crowd, to hear the symphony that only plays in silence. However, solitude is not effortless. It compels you to confront what you have buried, the disappointments, the grief, the fears you have evaded by remaining busy, social, and distracted. Yet, it is precisely within that confrontation that the seeds of wisdom are sown. Schopenhauer viewed solitude as a kind of mirror, a brutal yet honest one, that reflects you back to yourself without distortion. And in that reflection, if you possess the courage to gaze, you begin to discern who you truly are. He penned, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free." This assertion remains as radical today as it was in the 19th century. We are often told that freedom pertains to options, movement, the ability to do as we please. But Schopenhauer subverts this notion, arguing that true freedom is internal. It is the freedom from needing others to validate your existence, the freedom to think without censorship, to feel without manipulation, to live without performance. In solitude, we begin to create rather than merely consume, we begin to reflect rather than simply react. And over time, something sacred transpires. We cease being pulled by the world's demands and begin to be drawn by our own intrinsic purpose. This is where wisdom is born, not in the echo chambers of society, but in the quiet chambers of solitude. Yet, solitude is not a perpetual exile, it is a place to which one returns repeatedly, to recalibrate and to remember. For once you have touched that stillness, once you have tasted that clarity, you carry it with you, even into the cacophony of the world. You become someone who can stand within a crowd and not be lost within it, someone who can engage without being consumed, someone who can listen without an urgent need to respond. That is the authentic power of solitude. It does not merely alter how you are when alone, it fundamentally transforms who you are when you re-engage with the world. So, let us conclude with this. What profound discoveries might await you if you allowed yourself to be truly alone, not just devoid of others, but devoid of noise, of distraction, of the pervasive need to be anything other than yourself. For Schopenhauer believed that in the silence of solitude, we do not lose ourselves, we finally find ourselves. And in that profound discovery, we begin to live, not as mere products of the world, but as architects of our own meaning.